Hey guys, we are mid-January, almost at the end of January actually, and while my seedlings are doing really well in their little pod, I feel like my Snapdragon are getting a bit leggy. They're going really well, but you can see through here, they're starting to get just a little bit root bound in there. So I want to get these out of these little pots. Now, I could pot these on into pots like this, but I only have this much space and you can see it's pretty full. So if I was to take each of these and put them on a little pot like this, it's going to take up a lot of room. Also, my last frost is only about a month away, maybe not even 3 weeks, 4 weeks away. So to go to all this work and try and cram everything in here for the sake of 4 weeks seems a little silly. So instead, I'm going to plant these out in the garden. Yeah. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Peggy and I am going into my third year of growing a cut flower garden here on my allotment in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, which is just south of Tokyo in USDA Zone 9B. Thanks for checking out my channel. Okay, so now I am down on my allotment and I am going to be putting my Snapdragon in here, which is the first part of my garden, the first row. Now last year I had them right at the back, in the back row, thinking that Snapdragon stop producing once it gets hot, or these ones do, they're spring ones. So they're going to stop producing flowers once it gets too hot, and I thought because the trees were here it would give them a little bit of shade and so keep them cooler for longer. But what actually happened is that Snapdragon also really want to get to the sun and they very quickly will lean towards the sun. And so because that was in shade, they were kind of leaning this way to try and get the sun, and it ended up with me having really wiggly stems and not straight at all. So I've decided to put them in here. Also, as you can see, my next door neighbour, handily, has put up a windbreak here. And because these are going to get tall, they will get the wind coming across the garden. So this is going to act as a little windbreak for me as well. So that's handy, I don't need to do anything. So I'm going to put them in this part of the garden. Now, these are my tallest and you can see they're not very happy, and the reason they're not very happy is because they're starting to get root bound. You can see the roots coming out the bottom. That's a really good thing about these clear cases. I'm loving them. You can see exactly what's going on. So these want to be coming out. Now, in this one, I tend to have just one per tray, and that's just because that's how that germinated. But if you look at these ones, this is my mix and my doubles. So these are just kind of a general mix bag. These you can see have more than one in each one. I think I thinned them down to have about 3 in each pod. So you can see here, 1, 2, 3. And I've done that on purpose. So last year I pinched my sunflower. These aren't sunflower. I pinched my Snapdragon. And the size of the ones before, that's kind of the perfect size to be pinching them out. And you do that, you want to take off just the top bit. You could even cut it down to there if you like, but when they get a bit bigger, you kind of take off the top bit, and instead of having one growing stem, you have 2 growing stems come out, and so you get more flowers. Now, I did a whole experiment last year where I pinched half, I didn't pinch half, and then with the ones that I pinched, I water propagated some, and I soil propagated some. And what I found was the ones that weren't pinched came up much faster, and there wasn't that much difference in what they were giving me. In fact, I actually found that my not pinched ones were coming back faster, and I think just for my environment, it was better. I don't have that much room for them to spread out, so I actually found that the pinched ones were slower, much slower, and I was looking for things at the beginning of the season to go with my spring flowers because things get hot really quickly here. So I decided this year that I wasn't going to pinch them. Now you can go back and watch that video, but I'll link to it below so you can see exactly. I followed it through the growing season and you can see what my results were. So I decided I wasn't going to pinch, but then when I was looking around at what other people are doing, I saw that a few people don't pinch, but instead of that, they grow in little groups, little clusters. Now, Snapdragon don't need that much space. They're quite an upright flower, and they will branch out if you pinch them, but if you're not pinching them, they tend to be quite straight and upright. And so some people have said it's actually better to put them in little groups and plant them in as kind of clumps. Now I don't know if that's more of a garden arrangement and it'll make a nice big clump in your garden, or if that would be good for having in a cutting garden like mine. But that's my experiment for this year, is instead of pinching my sunflower, these are not sunflower, I keep saying that, instead of pinching my Snapdragon, I'm going to be planting in little groups, so little clusters of 3, and just seeing how that does. Now, it might be a complete disaster of a year and these are over pressured and they're all competing with each other and I end up with shorter stems and less blooms, but the whole point of my garden is to be a bit of an experiment to find out what works best in my area. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do with these ones. Clumps. Okay, so the row behind me is supposed to be about 80 centimeters, but it actually looks a bit skinnier. My plot is slightly angled, so the rows aren't perfect. But I am going to put in 3 plants per row, and you can see I have 4 rows in each of these boxes, so 4 rows of each one. I'm going to go ahead and get these in the ground. Okay, so that's my first set in. Now these are my pink soda that I have, and I've never grown these before, so I'm quite excited. And a few things. So although I have put these pretty close together, I have done them so they're slightly offset from each other, so it's not just straight rows and they're all lined up. You can see there's kind of a zigzag going on, just to give them a bit more space between each plant. So instead of it being 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, I've kind of done it 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, like this. Just to give them a bit extra space. I have then put a little bit of slow release fertilizer in the bottom because these guys look like they could probably use a bit of a feed now, and it hopefully will, at this stage, I've also put a little sprinkle of slow release fertilizer in the bottom of these because they look like they need a bit of a feed, and hopefully that'll help them set really good roots. Then when they start flowering again, I'll give them a second feed. Also, I have planted them in quite deep. Now I've done this for a few reasons. Snapdragon actually really like being cold. They like the cold weather, but they don't want to have a hard frost on them, and I'm being a bit optimistic by putting these in already. I might be a bit early and come to regret it, but I am going to put a low tunnel over these just to try and keep the worst of the frost off them. But they do actually quite like the cold. But because they didn't have such strong stems, they had been there a bit longer, especially my big spindly ones at the back. I'm going to put them in quite deep, and hopefully that'll just help them get a thicker stem on them, and get a bit healthier, hopefully, because the healthier they are now, the more flowers you're going to get off them in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of my other ones in. Here we go. Okay, so that is everything in the ground. I gave those guys a good water last night to give them enough time to soak up as much as they could from the roots, and it's been raining the last 2 days, so they have gone into damp soil. But I'm just going to go and give them a light watering again to help them settle in a bit. And then, you say hello? And then I'm going to go ahead and put down a layer of straw mulch. Now again, this is just a precaution because I'm really scared that I lose them all. Sorry, the sun's right in my eyes. I'm really scared that I'm going to lose them all. So I'm going to put down a layer of mulch, and that should stop the frost touching their roots at all. This also will come in handy because our spring here is very short and it goes from quite cold to really hot very quickly. So this mulch, if I leave it down, will actually help keep the soil cool once it starts getting hot, and hopefully that'll give me a little bit longer on my Snapdragon before they go dormant. So I'm going to go ahead and do some watering, and my helper is going to help me put down some of this straw. Okay, so that is watered and mulched, and hopefully it will be cozy. But I'm going to go one more step. Now these have been grown out in my garden in like a little plastic seed pod. Now that's not been heated, but it has given them some protection from the frost, but also from the wind. And this is quite a windy site, even with this windbreak here. So I'm going to go ahead and put these guys under a low tunnel. Now, my video last week was about me building a low tunnel for my stock. So if you want to see exactly how I did that, then you can go back and watch that video, and I'll put a link in the back underneath for that. But I'm going to go ahead and do the same for this one, just to give them that little bit more protection. Now, my last frost is only about a month away, so this isn't going to stay on very long at all. and like the one that I put on my stock, it's going to have ventilation holes in it so that all of the excess heat will be able to get out and rain will be able to get in, because I don't have any form of irrigation down here at all. So I still want the rain to be able to get in. I just want to keep the wind and the worst of the cold off of them, just for the next month until any danger of frost has passed, and then I will get that straight off so it doesn't get too hot as soon as the weather starts to turn and the last frost is out the way. I'll take that off and just leave them out as they are. But for now, let's get a low tunnel on. I've had a bit of a change of heart. It's really hot today, and although our nighttime temperatures are low, our daytime temperatures are actually quite hot, and because this wind breaks here, I think they might be okay about the wind. So instead of putting down the plastic, which I still have, I think I'm just going to put down frost cloth. What do you think? Yeah. I think I'm just going to put down frost cloth over my tunnel, and that'll keep the worst of the cold off them, but it'll still let them be nice and cool, and that'll keep the wind off. Frost cloth. Holding these down with metal pegs. And that's it. All of my Snapdragon planted in already. I hope I'm not being overly optimistic, but I'm hoping with the frost cloth and the mulch, these guys will like the cold, they'll get nice and tall and give me good strong stems this year. Yay! Okay, and that is all from me this week. So if you want to follow along and see how these do, if they survive, if a killing frost comes, which I'm really hoping it doesn't, remember to hit the subscribe button below. If you want to see what I do with all the flowers from my garden, and you can look back on everything I did last season, then you can check out my Instagram, which is From the Witch's Garden, and there's a link to that below. And I will see you guys next week. Bye!